Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Arrival of the conscious human being, arrival of the conscious humanity. And are humans just animals? I won't be too descriptive and detailed, but I remember seeing a video. It was yesterday. And this video was so heartbreaking that in the middle of it, I just stopped watching and I just became a sort of sorrow, a hopelessness sorrow for the human condition. You see, we can say human beings, they have relationships with their world. You have a relationship with the whole world, you have a relationship with what's in the world, you know? You have relationships with people's inner worlds, even. In the video I had seen, I saw the abuse of human nature. I saw that we have an animalistic component to us that regardless of how much we wear suits and ties and act civilized, there's savageness. So as long as we are savage, as long as we cannot control ourselves, as long as our emotions justify our inner realms over the outer realms, a human being can treat people like an animal. A human being can treat themselves like an animal. And the issue about being an animal on this planet is that you don't get to see the world. And really what ushered us into our civility was that we noticed the world separate from ourselves. So I was thinking of this idea, I wrote it down here. And so you see, there's people who have out-of-body experiences. You know, that's thing, like when you search for that, that's there. Like, you know, the people who have reported that they have experienced themselves outside of themselves. And then I thought, what if in the evolution of the Homo sapien from planetary archetypes, what if in order to go towards galactic archetypes to transform the human condition of interpretation, it would require to be an it would be here I've written it if we had an out of planetary body experience. You know, that means when I study something, I am studying it and observing it from outside of where that thing is. That means if the human being, while having this first person point of view, what if you had simultaneously an out of planet from like not out of the planet, but you can say like from the sky you looked at yourself. Imagine you weren't just looking from your eyes, you had an access of seeing yourself from the outside. If you saw yourself from the outside, you could see how you have zoomed into what part of the moment. You know, sometimes because things are in first person, it's not easy for us to see the whole situation. Many situations I have stepped to the side to be able to observe it. You know, that means when you're in something, you can't really see what you're doing. When you're outside of it, you're like, oh my God, I was making a mistake or I was doing something right. Like whatever, whatever it was, it's so this notion that in order for us to be conscious, we have to observe our consciousness. And if we are observing how we are observing, that means if we are consciously, if we, I mean, here's the thing. We say we have consciousness because what we see is in our attention. Right now, this computer screen is in my consciousness, the whole room is in my consciousness, the pen in my hand is in my consciousness, how I'm an object in the moment is my consciousness, and even these words, before I say them in my inner realms, they appear as a phenomena, as part of the content of what I am conscious of in the moment. So if we can observe the observer, technically something that surpasses the definitions of consciousness is observing that it's conscious, which is pretty much the whole mystical fascination. Who am I? Who's looking through your eyes? Who are you? Like, that's one of the best questions, you know? Nobody asked it from me. In my youth, I felt that I felt the world didn't need me when I was younger. Excuse me. But little did I know, the world doesn't need people. The world needs itself. That we have been zooming in and out of the moral spheres of our design. To be aware, that's the thing. Anytime something is noticing consciousness, it goes beyond the level of form. The difference between the word awareness and consciousness is that consciousness has an individual condition. You're conscious through something. You know, you're conscious of something. But awareness is unconditional. So you can say consciousness is like, imagine like something like conditional love. You know, you love someone in a certain way, at a certain place, at a certain time, at a certain moment in this manifestation. And then there is a sort of unconditional love. It doesn't matter where that person is, who that person is, because some part of the being cares for that human being. It's like the awareness is there. The conditions of the environment don't have to necessarily change the don't change how the awareness is there. You know, that means energy is energy, even though it transforms to different forms. So, if we had a out of planetary body experience, we would see the significance and the insignificance of the human being. That means, imagine we were like, life was a video game, we were controlling our bodies from like 200 meters in the sky. Imagine. Can you imagine that? Like, as if our eyes are 300, 200 meters in the sky and we're looking at ourselves walking in the street, you know? So I think this is the case, that when we are in a view, we cannot see from outside of the view. And that means if we are in life, it doesn't necessarily mean we can see life from outside of it. For me, I'll be honest, guys, the whole motivation of this episode is this video I saw. It just broke me. I just saw literally that human beings, we are shifting from animalhood to humanity. That means it's like there's a percentage of human beings, they still haven't understood the value of civility. They still haven't understood that it took us 4 billion years to evolve minds. When human beings treat each other like animals, like dogs, you know, it's savage. There is a savageness, you know. There is something that is, for me, it's equivalent to the worst odor, you know, where it's the lack of sight and a justification of savageness from the inner realms. It is hard to watch, you know. I have seen people who they are shackled by misery from their outer realms, and I have seen people who are shackled by misery in their inner realms. You know, I have seen human beings change and not become human anymore. You know, anytime our inner realms convince us that they are more important than the outer realms, it becomes a justification to hurt the outer realms. That means, honestly, I think there is no such thing as crazy and normal people. I feel that there's just people who don't see more than what they see to some degree. Do you see? So that it's just a limitation of sight. What that means is like we are actually energy that's become conscious of itself. Because we have a form, we name it, and then we have stories of morality come in. But when we realize we're the presence of energy being aware of itself before we are the story format, then the value system of life changes. That means, you know how many times the way I have valued the world has changed? And for those people that value system, their value system on life doesn't change, they actually deny themselves from growing. You see, a lot of violence occurs because the person thinks they can get away with it, you know? But what if there was a strange situation that this planet, this universal sector, was like a biological organism, as if we are cells inside a body, and when something is wrong, the body fights back. And I honestly feel that if a human being doesn't comprehend the value of the human position, there literally the universe breaks you. I'm not joking. The universe sends white blood cells to get rid of the nature that is not there, you know? So, of gold and of one says, are we animals? For now, yes. For now, yeah. You know how many animals there are, outside of the zoo? There's more animals outside of the zoo than inside the zoo. We are animals, but we are not completely animals. We are such a strange animal that it's kind of like we're not animals. We are an animal that has an intelligence boost that compared to other animals makes us feel like an alien. I honestly feel like an alien. I look at a squirrel, I look at a bird on like a branch, and I'm like, okay, like, some people, some evolutionary species are behind. I mean, honestly, if you put the palms of your hand on the ground and you look at the design, the design of human biology, you'll definitely see we're animals. That means there is animals. The thing is, are we just animals? Are humans just animals? That's the way I'm asking the question. That means I'm not saying we're not animals. I'm saying we don't appear to be just an animal. Because we perceive so many different animals and they're different. I mean, I sometimes think about it. Why aren't the other species up to our level? What happened to our species that suddenly made it further ahead? Did it have a head start, or did it have some sort of divine or chemical or radiation kind of intervention? you know? So that's the thing. We are an animal that doesn't experience itself just as an animal. Do you see? So we can think we're animals, but we're not animals, and we don't see like humanoid lions making wearing suits and going to work. We don't see turtles somehow like wearing suits and jackets and going to work. For me, honestly, one thing we have not thought about, I mean, something in religion, they say it in monotheistic tradition, and I'm saying this out of an effort to expand theological vision. But I want to say this notion that if God is everything in the religious sense, through the religious lens, if God is everything, then technically someone worshiping God is worshiping everything. If you're worshiping everything, that includes nothing. And if there's an ability to worship nothing, then attention doesn't have content. So I am kind of saying that technically it doesn't matter where the person thinks it's monotheistic, polytheistic. It has just been a human relationship through a portal of an ideological personification of the whole cosmos, in order for the person to realize that that God, I mean, if you think about it technically, from a, let's say, militant atheistic lens, okay? If you think about it from the militant atheistic lens, you're treating everything as man-made. So technically, if everything is man-made and a person feels they are in connection with God, that means a human being has found a way to see themselves as everything. Do you see? So technically, I'm saying, like, this is the fascinating thing for me. After objects, we started worshipping ink on a page, not realizing that the subject isn't the truth. This is why even in religious ideology, in religious circles, they say that a God is inconceivable. And if you ask a religious person about a soul, if the person knows what's going on with their program, then the person will tell you it's a mystery of the universal will, the inconceivable will of all that is. So for me, it was blowing my mind. I'm like, it's like, are religious people all around the world worshiping a truth that is everything? So how can you fight over the language? If your God is everything, what are you fighting over on earth? You know? If your God is in everything and everyone is within and without, do you know? Who are you fighting? That means when a human being fights another human being, kills another human being, you're killing your own God. Do you see the situation we have come? We have not, it's like we took the language seriously, but not its implication. If we had taken the implication of the language that our attention has been on for a while seriously, it would become a totally different landscape. Because I am telling you, people think they're just objects and they gotta move like objects their whole life. You're not just an object. And you're not just a subject. You are an event inseparable from the activity of the universal sector. You are the universal sector that has named itself. And so what would the arrival of the conscious human being be? The conscious humanity. What does that suggest? What kind of... Sorry guys, I'm internally feeling how I broke yesterday when I saw this video. You know, there's so many fucked up shit that goes on this planet. You can speak of an advanced civilization, but sometimes you see some fucked up shit that after some point you're just like, who am I talking to? What world am I in? That breaks your heart. When your world disgusts you, when some activity on the planet disgusts you, it's like, what honor then? People have been fighting over their imagined realities. And when we look at life, everything requires it. Imagination and reality are like night and day. You can't understand them without the two. That means when I look at something real, that's real. You know, right now I'm looking at a bottle, that's real. But when I close my eyes, that bottle I'm looking at in my inner realms is not the bottle. Its reality, its density of expression and meaning and significance is different. That means I can think of an anvil hovering in the air, but suddenly that anvil doesn't fall down and break like the ground, you know, and fall onto the floor underneath. The issue is, it's like you have a Ferrari, but violence, cruelty, savageness is driving it 10 miles per hour. We have forgotten how much hidden joys there are that the mind can attain. That if the person stops going with the self-obsessive algorithm, that means you're born and you gotta, of course, keep yourself physically alive, so you only think of your subjective self. I think people are just waking up every day and being like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? It's like literally, we're addicted to the next idea of ourself. But what if we realize that the self is not an idea? What if some person stared at all knowledge and shouted that the unknown was here first? You see, the human body is an animal. I mean, there's no denying that. You just you don't take care of yourself for a while. You'll see like what kind of animal you'll become. If you don't honor yourself for a while, you'll see what kind of animal you become. Dishonor is the sign. Do you know how many relationships, how many children on this planet, the reason the father leaves the family is because sometimes the father, of course, could have a messed up nature and just be like, I don't give a shit about my family, and leave. But then there could be a father that feels, because he has made mistakes, because he has hurt his family once before in the past, the father, when he goes near his family, because he loves them and he feels he hurts them when he's around them, the father stops going. Like, this was such a mystery for me, where I was like, why are so many people leaving? Because a man, of course, it is true, men have very hunter-like desires. It's very like, you achieve one thing, all right, done. Go to the next thing, done. Go to the next thing. Of course, there is that kind of mentality. But I'm saying it's like, at the same time, every living human being can notice the short-term result of something and the long-term result of something. That means you might have reasons to break a marriage in the short term. Same way a person can start a bit. I shouldn't. I shouldn't like compare a marriage to a business, but but I'm saying, but I'm saying it's like sometimes you have to sacrifice who you are in the short term, so what you're caring for in the long term can continue. Sometimes you gotta sacrifice the joys of the now just so that the future can experience joy. Because I'm telling you, it's we are creatures that seek pleasure, but we're also creatures that after attaining the pleasure will seek a greater pleasure. So the arrival of the conscious human being is a human being realizing that violence is the past. It is our past. You act violent on this planet, you haven't understood where you are. For now, do you know how long it took us to evolve? Like, think about it. Think about it from a planetary view. Think about it from the billions of years the story of humanity has been in the making. And human beings just arrive and it's so easy. Yeah, dislike someone, get rid of them. It's as if little did we see that genetical line of that person, all the ancestors of that person. There's a picture I'll show you. I'll put it here. This picture was so heavy. It felt to me what is happening, perhaps a potential archetype of what's going on with the human being. There we go. This picture, guys. If you look at this picture, guys, this picture is so heavy. Most people, their attention will probably go to the blue, white, and red. But I think this picture, whoever drew it, this is the suggestion that it's like, you see the queen's face? The queen's face is the face of a queen that doesn't have a higher. doesn't have, the king has died and the queen doesn't have children. You see? And that's kind of the thing where we are being crowned by our desires, yet we have the future is being forgotten. That means, honestly, when I look at, for example, different families and the commitments of different parental figures all around the world, it's as if a human being has lived enough to realize that life is not just about the self. You see, that's why I think we have to get into we whether we like it or not. After living here for a while, there is the urge of social existence. You see, people have judged themselves out of a comfort to actually live in their civilization as a human being. And you see that man in the back? That man in the back is what is literally like, you don't understand. Life is pretty intense. You know, at the end of the day, the choice is, do you want to have the last hit of chaos, or do you want to receive the joy, the order? Because chaos is as much of an option as order. I can right now just everything I see try to break. You know, it's an option. I could, everything I see in front of me, I could just slam to the ground. You know, but why doesn't the person do that? Because the value of what remains is way more than what leaves. It's easy to break something, but it takes something long to build. You know, even human psychology is fragile. Imagine a child in a country where there's war. That child has, it's like it can't even process the implication and meaning. It's just loud sounds and chaos and her being hurried out of there and whatnot. So it becomes a situation where it's as if the human being is not a creature that it can experience too much chaos and stay normal. The person has to climb out of the holes of chaos they're pushed in. There's so much chaotic stuff going on in this planet. And you know, I'm sitting in this corner being like, yay, advanced civilization, yay, 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 yay. And it's suddenly seeing like the chaos of the battlefield. Trust me, it's like there were some generals who their face was like stone. Their face was like there wasn't a single emotion, as if their inner life was hidden behind their body. You know? But there has been generals that have seen their armies get destroyed, and inside they have broken. Do you know? And that's the thing. That we have forgotten how rare it is for us to be standing on this earth. Can you imagine Albert Einstein walking down the street and imagine he's about to go make history and a bunch of thugs come and beat him up, imagine. And he gets so beat up he loses his passion for anything or something, as if he feels life told him not to go towards that direction. Then we'd be like, holy shit, the world lost Albert Einstein because Albert Einstein lost the world. He lost his passion. That means this planet should be seen as a battlefield where we are 8 billion human beings, and what is firing at us from the other side of the battlefield is not human. What is firing at us is the challenges of existing and continuing on this planet. Because you see, there are some people who they get pushed, then they get pushed, and then they break. But there are some people who get pushed and they learn how to push then. The enemy is teaching them how the enemy is going to get conquered. Do you know? That means I'm telling you, violence is as much of a teacher as love is. You be violent to someone, you're teaching them, literally exposing to their mind how violence like that is okay. The thing about violence is Isaac Asimov, the scientist and excellent science fiction writer. He said violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. That means violence is not for human beings. Violence is an animal that wasn't smart enough to find a way to, wasn't competent enough to find a way. That means if you have to destroy something, you are an incredibly stupid person usually. If you haven't found a way to resolve the situation, if the solution is destruction, yeah, it's like, fuck you, force that's going against me, and the other person's like, yeah, fuck you too, force going against me, and it's like the world is just breaking, and we are not realizing that all the times, that all the moments in history where men have been shooting metal at each other at fast speeds was the time where they could have used that metal to build civilization, or for me, it's like human beings, of course, we're creatures that take certain pressures throughout the day, and then we can't keep these pressures inside. We got to express them. You don't know how many days I have been dishonored, or something unnecessary has happened, and I've just at the end of the day come home and I haven't done anything. Like, I've held myself back. The anger, the rage, and everything, just held it in my inner realms. I've gotten home, I've picked up the pen, and I've poured out everything onto the page. I can tell you that before video games, people would, that intensity inside, because I mean, think about it, how much evolutionary genetical memory do we have of being more savage? We have more genetical memories of savageness than civility. So now civility is the game to play. It's not even about being a good person, being a bad person. It's just about, you're alive on a planet once. What's the smartest thing you can do? Is the smartest thing getting rid of the potential of human minds? This is why I'm like, I realize, I'll tell you something personally I experienced throughout my life in different social environments. I have noticed human nature, and what it is that it's a massive co-creation, the world. That means to be a social person, it means to, in some sense, literally, it's like, it's building with the moment. But if the person feels the moment has to be built in a specific way, then the person can't engage. I have an uncle who I indirectly learned a lesson from how he was living. And he's this person who, of course, my family is hilarious. One side is like religious, one side is like my extended family, one side of it is like atheist to a level of like Marxist or communist kind of levels of thinking. So I've literally seen different angles, and it's hilarious. Let me tell you, like when you um I can tell you that this life doesn't need ideology. Ideology is just a byproduct of it. It just arises when you live. When you do things, eventually names and concepts follow, whatever you do. For me, it's like the person has to find one moment in this life where they realize that true power doesn't mean you demonstrate the power. And this is an argument which, from a secular position, can be argued in the way, why not? Why shouldn't power be shown? If you have power, why shouldn't you? If you have a strength, why shouldn't you use it in this world? I mean, that could be an argument from like the dictator's point of view. If I have power, if I can do something, why shouldn't I? If you had an opportunity to eat a burger and you hadn't ate a burger, for you were on an island for a while and suddenly you had found the burger, wouldn't you eat it? Do you know? So you could totally see there is the same reason we have a justification to being civil. We can also say there's no point to being civilized. We're all going to die. Why do we care? Let's just live in an anarchist, Mad Max kind of civilization because we were all so mad that we went mad to the max. I think that's the whole thing about the title of the movie Mad Max is genius. It doesn't necessarily mean that we were there was someone named Max that's mad. It could potentially mean that the civilization went mad to its max. So that's the thing. We have to, because I thought about it. You know, I don't want to share the video I saw, but the video that I saw was so savage. The human beings in it were so savage that one of the human beings was so savage that it was weird. It was literally like seeing that it wasn't human. That means there are human beings treating human beings in ways that are not human, and it's strange. It's strange. So this is why I feel if the person lets their past define them too much, they get possessed by their past. An angry person, that's what's happening. When you see someone, I'll give you an example. There's this video, these three people in the line, there's this incredibly beautiful woman at the ATM. Behind her, there's just a regular guy, and behind her, the regular guy, there's a kind of mischievous guy in the back. What the mischievous guy does is he, excuse me for saying this, but he slaps the girls behind, the beautiful girls behind. The girl gets so angry, she turns around and slams the guy behind her. That means it was as if she was so convinced of what the situation was, she turned around and justified the expression of the anger and slapped the guy who had done nothing. And the guy behind the girl is just laughing. Do you know? And it's like this situation where there was ignorance on two sides. It was one energy through ignorance echoed on to another energy with ignorance. And that's the thing. We got to realize this is sometimes why I feel there's something that in the language of Western culture that's a bit strange. And of course I'm just criticizing this, not criticizing, but commenting on it from the outside, so don't take what I'm saying too seriously. But I've noticed that, for example, if a human being treats a dog, let's say you're a pet owner, okay? When you're a pet owner, when you own not a cat per se, but a dog, okay? You have to show some authority to that dog, some domination, That means that it's like, I've never had a dog, of course, but I asked a close friend of mine, how did you raise your dog? And he just explained everything to me, And so what that means is like there's an intensity, because dogs are in pack animals. You become like you become the leading dog, right? Now there's an issue. I've noticed that when people speak about dog, like they treat their pets like close to human personality level, okay? Now there's nothing wrong with that, but if there was something wrong with that, what could it be? And the issue is that it's the language of when you make a lesser, I don't want to say lesser, I mean they are inferior. Like a dog doesn't have a human brain, so we can't say it's the same animal. But I'm saying, like, when you treat an inferior animal equivalent to like a human being, you're actually indirectly making the human being equal to an inferior animal. So that means the person who treats a dog, for example, as a family member, not that there's anything wrong with this. I mean, of course, you can have an intimate relationship like you're just friends with life. You could totally be like that. But I'm saying in regards to human psychology, for example, when we say good boy or good girl to a dog that's coming, we don't realize indirectly we are personifying inferior behavior of a species to a human level, right? So that means there's a consequence with relating to something inferior if you're superior, because you actually become inferior simultaneously. This doesn't mean we become like robots and treated, we'd be like dog one, It's like dog 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 6, come here, you know. I'm not saying we become like that. I'm just saying that the language is it's important, because how do we value life? Because it's a force. The whole universe is made of forces. Everybody can think I'm free to do whatever the person likes. You know, the person can feel free to do whatever they like, but on some level, the laws of nature are doing whatever they like before you. That means I could like to give a talk for 10 hours, but probably after that 10 hours, I might just go like not talk for months, you know? So it becomes a situation where there's an intensity involved. There's a sort of exchange. A friend of mine, a very wise friend of mine, of course, now I have no idea who he is and where he is, but this friend of mine at the time, he gave this metaphor which was excellent, and he shared this metaphor with me of human beings being like gas, like different colors of gas. And when one color of gas, in some sense, what do you call it? Let's say somebody is like green gas, and somebody is like blue gas, and somebody is like red gas. And these three people have a conversation. It's as if you were watching these three gas clouds from a distance having a conversation, their conversation would be the meshing of their realities. Do you know? So I think that a person who leaves the house at the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day he returns, he's not the same color of gas as he stepped out of the house. So many different things in life communicate today. It's as if like the way you live is sculpting the memories of your future self. So I'm just saying, like it's like it's strange. We gotta be able to notice that we are individuals separate from our environment, but then we gotta relate to our environment if we want to live in it. You know, it's a very giant problem. Human savageness. It's literally like a human being can become so savage that they can dishonor. You can literally act like you can be a human being on this planet, but you can treat the human civilization as if you're an alien invading it. Because that's what savageness is. Imagine a gazelle. Imagine a gazelle just chilling out of nowhere. It sees a lion running towards it, biting its back. And imagine a gazelle has never seen a lion. You know, has never seen a lion. So that lion biting that gazelle is literally like an alien invasion experience. Or I remember years ago I saw this other video that made me cry, where it was like made waterfalls emerge from my. The video was messed up. It showed human beings. I don't know what country it was, but it was some country in the east. It just showed human beings. Um, uh, I mean, it's so savage if I say this, but I think I gotta say it because we gotta man up as a species to tackle these problems. Um, we gotta mankind up. Pretty much these stupid, incredibly idiot, savage human beings, they were skinning this animal without killing it. And it was savage. Do you know? Human beings can be like demons to inferior species. You know, sometimes we can think of ourselves very highly, but then we have a shadow. Everything has a shadow. There's a chaotic dimension. Carl Jung was so wise and smart that he noticed there was a shadow, And he said that unless you actually look at your shadow and realize why there is that shadow, you will never understand the light behind what is creating that shadow. There's a picture I'm going to show people right now. Carl Jung provided us a roadmap towards finding the actual self. And there's four major archetypes. And these four major archetypes are things that I think every person, they should be treated as great meditations, great Jungian meditations, where the person just sits for a moment and just looks at that concept as if it was a puzzle or a design or some map, or they're trying to figure out what does it mean, what does it imply. Chaos is here. I'm telling you, human beings, we have way more history of being like vicious, violent, blind animals than being like conscious, efficient, collective human beings. But now, Mr. Within is saying we have to speed up towards the collective efficiency so then we can have the emergence of the advanced individual. That means, you might not believe it, but after seeing that chaotic video yesterday, I noticed that it's like some things are so important that even the inner realms can't comment on, you know? I feel like there was a time in one dream, in one of my dreams, I was on a balcony and I saw a drone come up to the balcony. A drone. It was in a dream. It was a balcony I had never been on. It was just this house I'd never been in it. And in the dream, I was in this balcony and this drone just flew. This drone that was the size of, let's say, I don't know, a 26-inch computer screen or something like that. That big of a drone flew, and its length was much bigger. So drones are gonna look like triangles, like upside down pyramids, I think, in the future. Some sort of design like that. But anyways, the drone was in the dream. There was this feeling of surveillance. Now I woke up and I thought about it, and I was like, of course there is a privacy to human life, but I realized sometimes in the privacy of the human life is where the most cruel and vicious acts are being done. So you might not believe it, but if we can really have an advanced civilization set into motion where every human being in every institution, in every global enterprise, you know, they start to think of, all right, how do we build a legit advanced civilization? It would mean as the body of the civilization is being built, infrastructure, buildings, geometry of like, we get tired of squares and rectangles, seeing that, like, there's a body point to the emergence of an advanced civilization. You can say then there's the mind of an advanced civilization. The mind of an advanced civilization would mean the greater story that every human being will be telling themselves when they wake up in this world. Because I'm telling you, there is a story. You can't be an individual without a story. Like, who are you then? You know? These four Jungian archetypes are really crucial to consider. These Jungian archetypes provide an insight to the completion of the levels of human personality. A savage person is a person who has given up on living as a mind. If you're a violent person, you have given up living as a mind. Why? Because you either think it was too hard or you didn't see it. So there should be this incredible. I don't know how to say it, but I'm telling you, when you realize you deserve the better, and there's a better way you can live, you stop living in the lesser way. I am telling you. It's literally like the movie Transformers. It's just now the thugs of this world need to do it. They have to realize that it took you 4 billion years to have a mind. If you do something that's exactly like an animal, what's the difference? Why do we have minds if it's all the physical violence has become the focus? Why do you even exist as a subject to yourself? Now, here's the strange thing. Now, I got to share a picture here. So, this picture really explains the Jungian archetypes in a very simple way. Okay? So, whoever's tuned in, I don't know how many people are listening. How many do we have? 11 people. Nice. Okay, so the 11 people listening, if you look at the live stream, if you look at the wallpaper, the four major Jungian archetypes, these are all, you can say, different moments of awareness to self. When you're in the persona archetype, you're noticing how how your identity, your persona, your personality is based on language, which is a dualistic system, and language is like a mask. This is why there exists the concept of lying and the concept of honesty. That's the only reason it exists. Existentially, nobody can lie. Everything existentially is just evident. But it is experientially where there seems to be another room in the works where we can hide the real self in and wear masks of identity or ideology. So that's one of the great, you can say this is Mr. Within saying the great meditation on the persona Jungian archetype, one of the four major. Then, before I get to the shadow, I'm going to tell you the anima and the animus. So after you realize duality is like a mask, okay, or in the Sufi tradition, technically they had this. They would say in the Sufi tradition they had four levels to insight. They had the first level, which was the rend, the person who noticed life is a game. Anytime you notice life is a game, you don't emotionally suffer. There's no emotional, you can say, consequence there. You just notice it's like, yeah, it's a game. Elements are rising and falling as civilization. So the persona, I find it paralleling the dervish way of thinking, where they were like, you got to see life as a game. In Farsi they call it rend. You become a rend, pretty much a gamer, but you're seeing identity as the game. So then we go to the anima and the animus. The anima and the animus is wondering if the body is a mask, and then comprehending the body through duality. So it's another great moment of meditation where you just have to go find a moment where you're alone with the cosmos and you can be just who you are naturally without any doing anything or having any opinion. And just in that moment, wonder about the opposite. Now, if you notice in the picture, the guy who is standing, he's looking in the mirror and he's seeing a girl. Carl Jung said that in our path towards becoming, discovering the real self, you can say, the self, or I would say, because for me, in my mind, I connect Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization with the self. That means Carl Jung is commenting on. Carl Jung is pretty much creating some sort of model for the inner realms. Maslow's hierarchy was a model of self-actualization in the outer realms. Maslow is a sociologist. Just Google Maslow's hierarchy. You'll know what I'm talking about. Now, the anima, the animus. So let's say you're a person, you're a boy who's never had a sister. Do you know? And your inner realms, visualizing what it would be like for you to have a sister, would be a kind of notion of confronting the anima. So the anima for the man, the anima is the yin yang opposite, but as through the feminine archetype. And then we have, for the girl looking in the mirror and seeing a boy, the girl is seeing the animus. So it's as if, like, rather than us thinking that our identities are something fixed or something not even too fixed, very abstract, but I'm telling you, it's about a human being practicing towards its better life. And in one of its practices, it comes to this notion that I am this, the world is that. Then suddenly it starts to see this I am this and I am the world is that kind of thing in many different levels. So you can say in all these Jungian archetypes, the person is mastering a skill, like a shaman monk learning a martial art. But the mind demonstrates itself through insight, and the only moment you have insight is when you're aware what's in your sight. What is the one looking? And it's not a personality. which is that's why I'm saying there's a, you know, be playful with language wherever you are. Language is not truth. Language is a echo. It's the echo of an event, existential event. So subjects are how objects are echoing, and our mind is like a field of activity. In the Bhagavad Gita, they say something like, become aware of the field of activity of the knower. Like that level, the Gita uh, acknowledges it. Anyway, so you confront the yin and yang, you know, how man and woman are like night and day. It doesn't mean we should think day is night and night is day. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's okay. We have differences. Because life is a play. And the best thing you can do as a human being is play your part in nature's great theater, in this cosmic theater. For me, it's no longer about a belief is going to rule them all. What is this, Lord of the Rings with ideology and idealism? You know, one ring to rule them all, one language to own everything in reality. It's impossible. Language is a box where we're trying to put a dynamic event in. It's just fragmented usually. So anyways, the persona, I said that was the rent. Let me bring in parallels to Sufism. In Sufism, there was then the second game where it was the ego breaker. The second level in Sufi insight was the person who had now realized, they had realized life is a game, but now they were no longer a player in a game. So life had transcended from being just a game because they were not the same player. You know, so I would say that's the anima and the animus. That upon complete witnessing of the various elements of energy being like fire and energy being like water, the gentleness and intensity, it's like you have to witness these two forces simultaneously. If chaos and order can become like two wings of a bird with perfect symmetry, the wings flying at the same time, you know, whoever witnesses the symmetry of chaos and order, that's technically a blessing. Life is providing you an opportunity to be a pilot. Because usually everybody right now is an advanced communicator. I only see these two archetypes. Everything else I really don't care about. I don't see even meditate. I use the words, but like what I see is all human beings are communications of the universal sector. They're advanced communications of the universal sector. That means the world has communicated something next level, and it's the human being. Okay, now the human being is conscious that it can too communicate. So technically, because we are made from the earth, and the earth makes, like, think of it this way, the earth made led to people, and people led to you can say an earth in their mind where they are a subjective person. So it was as if first there was the objective positioning of a world. I call this unconscious world. Then from the unconscious world, we went to the unconscious self, the objective evolution. From the unconscious self, we went to the conscious self, the subjective evolution, where we are now currently. From the conscious self, we will go to the conscious world, where it will be uh, where we are not bodies moving in worlds, we are worlds moving bodies. That's the peak evolution. And then beyond that, it's inconceivable. So it becomes easy afterwards. It's just the only way you can see it is walking through it. Then it becomes super easy. So, anyways, you can say the ego breaker had realized the yin and yang were in the same circle. Okay, they were in one circle. The chaos and order was being witnessed at once. So after that, in the Sufi tradition, there was something they would call it. Literally divuna, which in Farsi, like in it translates as the crazies. And the crazies were beings, human beings who had seen life was a game, they had realized they were more than a player, and now the content of life had elevated to a point where it was branching from deviated patterns from the norm. Think of the normality and your understanding of normality like a cup. Okay, and imagine water is being pulled to the brim. Now the next drop is going to cause your experience of this normal reality to have a surplus into another dimension. The cup gets filled to the brim and it pours out. Okay, so you can say, in the mystical sense, in the Sufi sense, the person would witness a truth of nature that surpassed the normal language of the time. They would go try to speak it, and people will be like, "Yo, man, that's crazy," you know, not realizing the whole world is strange. We're on a rock in the middle of a nowhere. We're on a rock in the middle of vacuum-wearing watches. The world is definitely, you know, a very strange place. You know. So the crazy would be the confrontation of the shadow, which is confronting your own chaos. I would say not confronting your own chaos, but it would be like, I would say it would be a dimension where the way you find a resolve through that phase is by becoming content with the unknown. If you realize it is okay for the unknown to be unknown, you no longer have a shadow. Because there are some wars that are in the outer realms and there's some wars in the inner realms that the person has to stop fighting. They have to stop being a person that is forgetting the unknown potential of the human mind. That means I'm pretty sure where Einstein came up with E equals MC squared, he was like, holy shit, anybody else could have done this. So suddenly it was as if like teach science, you know? Like it was a moment where it was the potential is there, we don't know. This is why I'm saying whenever you see a human being anywhere, anytime in life, see them as a rare, like phoenix flying in the sky, in your sky, as if you have been privileged to see another life form, you know, another form of how life conducts itself. You know, believe it or not, I learn from people as much as I learn from listening to them. The eyes are extracting their own lessons all the time. So. The confrontation of the Jungian shadow. There's a quote from Jung I have to read. Read for you. There we go. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. Carl Jung says, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. And he finally says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That is the point of the resolution towards fear. When fear enters the room, wonder why it is there. When a certain state of mind enters their moment, wonder why it is there, you know? My challenge to a lot of obstacles in my life, I'm like, why am I looking at this problem right now? You know? And it's not that there's an I. Sometimes it's just nature. Sometimes moments don't have rational meaning because nobody has interpreted variables to even rationalize it. A lot of life is just, it's this unknown world where knowledge must stop fearing itself and march into it. That means, seldom is this said, your better life is waiting for you as much as you're waiting for it. Your greater self is like, okay, let me see. You know, it's like your future self is looking at your past self and it's like, hey man, move your ass. You know, get to work. You know, like it becomes a situation. You know, can you imagine the person doing something so wrong that they're suddenly in their inner realms, all their ancestors are like, how could you? And in their inner realms, also all their future selves and grandchildren are like, what the? We will evolve to a multidimensional way of speech. That's the issue of language. In the dictionary, it's technically multidimensional. Words have multiple meanings. Words can be used in multiple sentences. So we're like, the value of the meaning of human life can change in accordance to the different ways the human life moves. So we got to start realizing that the damage that belief systems have been doing, not belief systems, ideological systems, which require belief to even be have an influence. You see, what is belief? It is the human attention gracing a language as the ultimate authority. Dear listeners, what if you were never any concept? What if you are present? And that is it. You're just a presence. That is the simplicity of it. That I don't know how people think there is enlightened beings. When you think about the notion of being, there's nothing you can do. You are being. That means there is something, the only thing that honestly, I don't know how people are dishonestly living. Because that honesty is the only, honesty in life is like the only inner realm honor that at the end when everything is about to, the curtains are about to be pulled and the candle is at its last glow, do you know? You know what it is? This mind is something you're holding, and remember, there will come a time where you have to put it down. So while you hold it gracefully, wield your intelligence as if you have mastered your craft before you were born. We are totally like antennas. I am so convinced. We're definitely antennas, you know? We're antennas that are glorifying their self-expression. So anyways, guys, after you confront the shadow, after you don't fear the unknown, what do you get? The reward, the inner treasure, the real self. You get to see what you are. And that is the greatest blessing. And I can tell you, when you see what you are, you will laugh at every concept. And you will cry at every moment, at every experience, for every experience. I'm telling you, there's moments I've had where I've had tears, but nothing like, no, I haven't had an emotion. I haven't been sad. It's just been tears just coming out of my eyes for no reason. And sometimes I wonder, and you know what it is? I've realized what it is that it's a death in the unconscious mind. An archetype is dying and we don't realize it. Something is happening to the person. They're changing. That's the thing. When you do something, here's the thing. Any person who goes into the domination mindset, okay. I'm not talking about like, I mean in society. Like a dictator, you know? There's the whole domination kind of like mindset. Here's the thing. You cannot control something without simultaneously being controlled. That means if right now I get obsessed and I'm like, all right, you know, I want to have like, I want to control uh, like, here's the thing. Imagine I'm like, I want to control the coffee cup. You know, I want to dominate a coffee cup, and I just hold that coffee cup firmly in my hand, and I just forever hold on to it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm dominating this coffee cup. I'm mastering it. This coffee cup, see, I'm powerful. I'm controlling it. But then you see, your right hand is kept occupied. So when you hold something, you also lose the ability to hold something new. And that's the issue. To be honest, what can people control in a changing world? They're just causing disturbance to other people's piloting. I'm trying to speak in regards to a context of finding a resolution to violence. After the person, and I forgot to mention something, you see, the self has a journey too. After you confront the shadow, it's not like bingo, you win the prize or whatever, After you confront the shadow and you notice the self, you have to watch and witness the self enough to feel you can deserve it. So think of it this way. Imagine we have an outside teacher and the student is watching the outside teacher, let's say a martial artist, and the student is in some sense trying to replicate or trying to learn from the outside teacher. Okay, now Mr. Within is saying once you get to confront these archetypes and you get to the self, and in the Sufi tradition, the fourth level was they technically would say rendane mast, which would mean it was a drunkenness, but it wasn't chemical. It wasn't like they would drink alcohol. They were inseparable. So after you completely confront the shadow and you come to the self, that's when your non-dual life begins. And your non-dual life, you become a witness, an attributeless witnessing student of how your moment is moving. You start learning from not just the movement of what is considered in your outer realms, but the inner realms have also been your tutelage, you know. Now, in the Sufi tradition, there were these whirling dervishes, and they would spin for hours, and they would say that the way they would spin for hours is that their consciousness would dismantle from an individual. It's like they would start off as a person spinning in a circle, then midway in the spinning of the circle, they would manage to witness themselves as the whole moment. And so their attention, they even considered their attention to be out of their body. So those whirling dervishes that dance for hours and hours and hours, or that moment where the rock star is in the zone, or that dancer can't stop dancing, that's literally their attention being outside of them. Do you know? So imagine as if the same, there was a copy paste version of that Sufi dervish, like whirling from like with a jetpack looking at himself from above the ceiling. So when they would be when the being had experienced enough of teachings of inside the cup, when the cup came to the brim, that surplus meant an out of conceptual body experience. Out of the mind's body experience, not per se out of the body's mind. So the whirling dervish was at a state of ecstatic union, where there was no dervish, there was no Sufi, there was no someone worshipping something. It was the moment was complete before it needed to be. The inseparability had been remembered, the divine inseparability, which is the sword that has already cut the veil of thought. This life is really like the thing of Excalibur. Everybody's like their own type of King Arthur, where there comes a certain moment where you'll realize something is worth it, and you move towards that. And when you move towards the new, you are always a fool at the beginning. So in this Jungian archetype, the self is that. The self is realizing all the persona, the shadow, the anima, the animus, even how those three had each their own notion of a self. So you could say three archetypes and their shadow archetypes. You kind of mean that means an archetype has a shadow as well, we could say. Duality, usually that's where shadows live. They live in duality. Some person once told me that the whole metaphoric value of the archetype of the fallen angel from in monotheistic tradition was duality, as if man was in a non-dual state of being and then he fell into a dual state of endless doing. Excuse me. So that was the resolution, that you realize that you are a multidimensional being, and the outer realms, they have a certain program you have to listen to. And I am encouraging all those mystics in the cave to, for the first time, care about what the scientific endeavor is trying to do. Let me tell you, we are a being that there is an energetic per se limitation. The person gets tired at the end of the day, but there isn't in your inner realms. You don't get tired. That's what I'm telling you. In my inner realms, I can move in endless ways and I don't get tired. But in my outer realms, if I start doing, in my inner realms, I can fly. But in my outer realms, if I try to fly, I'll fall down. And this discrimination of the outer realms and inner realms is so crucial, especially at a time now when every YouTube video I see in Western culture, there is an embrace of course, the psychedelic mind. And I was like, all right, so we have this sort of branch of metaphysical inquiry where people are looking at the physics of the realm and they're like, wait a minute, what if it's not about gods and atoms? What if it is about nature? Nature's voice being more ancient than man. You see, the ancient Greeks acknowledged the concept of a logos. The logos was the inner guiding voice. It was a concept that actually arose from Heraclitus. So the logos, this inner guiding voice, meant that the ancient Greeks, in regards to their inner realms, were in a symbiosis with a collective being. The more secular we became, the more we found reasons to get angry at what didn't make sense, the more our senses began becoming the limits of the realm. So you can say back in the day they were living as minds moving bodies. Now we are bodies only limited to moving minds. And so if we feel something happens to the body, we feel there's no presence of mind. If you care for the world, you will live in it. Guys, so Erasmo, that's a very nice comment. I totally see what you're saying. Yeah, that's the thing about pain. It was, to be honest, this was something that anytime anything happens to you in the conscious waking state, you're watching it. It's just that we are trying to get rid of the unnecessary so we can find the necessary. And what is unnecessary is this, that's the whole theme of today's talk, because the video I saw, guys, was so heavy. It was so savage that it just like, you know, that silent, as if like the universe has shouted at you. It's as if like I'm sitting here talking about an advanced civilization. Then I saw a video of a human being doing something so savage that I was like, you don't know, it was like there was just this silent shock, as if hope had died for a second. As if I was silently grieving my own hope. But then I sat down. Sometimes when I want to think about some things very deeply, I just go lie down on my bed and I don't get up until I have a solution. That means I patiently just lie down in my bed until I have figured out a workable model of how I'm going to express myself to someone. We are the static witness of a dynamic world. And I feel the games of the mind are just beginning. A lot of things has been very physical oriented. We have just been playing the games of animals. Now for the first time we can play greater games. And of course, I mean, I'm not avoiding the fact that we have, like, psychology has progressed, but psychology has not progressed enough. And its limitation is that we need a complete modeling of, what do you call it? Um, Educational reform. Literally, we need to create a completely different interface for education. We got to change the software. We got to change the operating system. The way the educational system is operating. And I feel the best curriculum shouldn't be every nation having their own curriculum and teaching kids. We should have a global community. Like, it's about time. We have a United Nations for politicians, but we don't have a United Nations for philosophers. You know, imagine the United Nations had a philosopher section. And then at the end of the United Nations, all the politicians had made their decisions on whatever. At the end of it, we had different philosophers sharing different angles of moral righteousness and wrongness. Do you know? Can you imagine? We need to encourage advanced communicators. I see it. I don't. It's not. I don't see it now. I mean, it's like it's emerging right now. It's being pioneered. But I can tell you in the future, just like how we have like public servants, we have like police, firemen, medics, paramedics, we have people serving the civilization, the body of the civilization. The advanced communicator would be the mind, the person who, it's as if like, imagine in a household where there's domestic violence. Instead of calling the police, they call an advanced communicator, and the advanced communicator of course comes with someone who is like has some sort of value, security, protection, and the advanced communicator comes and says, all right, everything in life, its meaning is in communication, so let's see what the issue in the communication is. And imagine, instead of, there's a penalty. So if you like, there was a thing where I was living in this apartment years ago, and there was a neighbor above my house, and it was a very public place, and this person, I would hear the wife scream. Not scream, but like, it was, let me tell you what it was. It was, then I figured out, I went and see what it was. Not scream, but it wasn't a scream. It was as if the husband was shouting. You could hear a man's voice shouting louder, angry, as if the man didn't care about his wife, and he didn't even care about if the neighbors heard him. Like that kind of a savage, you know. And um, the situation was, then I realized they're a Persian immigrant family, and the thing about certain immigrant families is that they are so reserved to get involved with the culture they don't understand. Do you know? And it's strange sometimes. It's strange when something chaotic happens. Like for me, sometimes I wonder, like, when domestic violence happens, it's like, it's not just you can forgive, you know? So for me, it's as if there was a choicelessness. Maybe financially, the wife in that family couldn't do any, you know? I went and said it to the security of the building. But I don't think anything happened. So that person was such in the cave of their inner realms that they felt a person was like a video game character. They could do whatever they want, you know? There's a reason honor and justice are siblings. For me, it's a designer's solution. This world just needs designers. If there comes a time where, I mean, of course, the person doesn't know how long they're walking in the realm. But just like how in mathematics we have like the millennium questions, these questions whoever solves and gives a proof to, they get $1 million. These mathematical theorems and things that require a response to. Imagine we had an association. I would definitely, if I had the power to do this, the ability to do this, I would definitely do this, where I would create, aside from this advanced communicator kind of thing going on all globally, I would create this sort of foundation that would honor designers. That anybody who was a designer in some way, do you know, they would instantly, this foundation would be like a guardian angel running towards you, you know? Because right now it's a design issue, it's a model issue. It's not human beings don't have the ability to be better. It's that the world isn't better, so even if the human being becomes better, it immediately descends to the standard of living the civilization has chosen for itself. So the arrival of the conscious human being begins from what? From noticing the dismissal of the unconscious human action. So we have to literally, like Carl Jung being our general, shouting to the future generations, as you march into the unknown, you must utilize your conscious intelligence to process the unconscious. There was something Jordan Peterson in one of his lectures. He's Jordan Peterson, of course. He's for me, he's one of those people. I'm so happy that his voice has reached the ears. He was saying that a person doesn't need to just be good. It's not enough to just be a good person, a good boy, a good girl in this world. Okay? That you as a human being have to know your ability. Honestly, I'm going to raise my kids with martial artist psychology, you know? Like I'm gonna, like, if I don't have kids yet, but if in the future I did, I would raise them like Shaolin monks, you know? Fearless because they understand the opportunity of life. And in Shaolin monk practices, there was the physical technique where you had to have an incredible discipline to master your own ability. You had to try the move so many times until you were comfortable doing it, and you could even measure the amount of energy it took you to do that move. Do you know? It's like a person trying to figure out in their own personal, let's say, practicing in the forest martial art way, you know, how many techniques they can do, you know? And in Shaolin monk, yeah, they had Zen. They teach them Zen. That means Shaolin monks, they're good meditators. They understand it. They understand that the mind has to be at a state of peace, then activity has to emerge. If your inner realms, there's ripples on those ponds and you begin doing something, it becomes clouded how you express yourself in the outer realms. So Zen is very crucial. Zen means you don't fear emptiness anymore. You're actually enlightened by it. You find contentment with the void. You realize that's just a part of existence. It's empty sometimes. Excuse me. Guys, there's this picture I'm going to show you. Somebody commented something in the chat section. Let me see if there's enough opportunity for me to see this. This doesn't mean every monk is wise and knows what's going on, you know? I don't know. Here, maybe I shouldn't share the picture. Oh man, I'm gonna share this picture, guys, but I'm not doing it out of any sort of disrespect. I just want to show the playfulness of human nature, that sometimes we're just creatures. Sometimes mindfulness surpasses creature, but some person made this really silly meme. All right, let me show you. At least this might bring a smile, but please don't misinterpret Zen after you see this picture. You know, Zen has a hidden wealth to it. This picture is just showing one human being's. The other monk is like, bro, we're monks. What the fuck? Sorry, guys. You know, maybe that was inappropriate to share, but it was just a meme. the whole no, the whole notion of it, of course, is not to be. I mean, we are human beings. We can't forget that. Of course, to be a monk is a very deep commitment. It's a vow towards a sort of inner purity. It's a detachment from materialistic outcome, and towards its complete fruition, it is remembrance. Somebody said in the chat section, the monk is remembering what? You know, what is the point of a human being renouncing worldly desires and going towards some sort of insight? Like, what is that person doing? You know, the whole aim, I find, of it is that regardless, I mean, of course, there's many obstacles on the way. Technically, that monk in the picture, the one who was, you know, not honoring the vows of monkhood, that monk hadn't realized. I mean, not hadn't realized, but it was a sort of notion that it's like that person is still a monk. I mean, just because in one moment something moves or something is seen in a certain way doesn't mean the person has stopped being a human being. You know, the whole point of being those monks you see with the robes, the whole point of these monks is that they actually are there trying to walk the path of Buddha, and the Buddha's path was trying to get rid of suffering. So the reason these people are living simply is to get rid of suffering. I think this guy in the picture was a kid who had no reason why he was in the temple, so he was more excited by what was outside of the temple. You know, you got to get to see a bit of the illusion because before you can even care about the concept of truth. We are minds that for now are unknown viewers of a known landscape, whereas part of this landscape is the body. Now, of course, you must not forget a purpose to the meaning of life is actually to be the biological being. So, atoms, when I think about what's the purpose, what's the meaning of life for an atom, I don't really see that much meaning. The person will eventually not have the same energy to run at the same things. In mystical texts, we find examples of beings who lived on this planet without having karma. Did you know that? There's human beings who have been in this world but never actually been from it. Not of it, to be in the world and not of it. If religion is perceived as an instruction booklet, then what's the point of the brain? That means if all behavior should be based on language, then what's the point of your mind being able to generate new language? If we care about evolution, we can't treat the world like a painting, like an ideological painting on a wall. It's no longer about, who wears the nicest hat in society. It's about actually developing the system. So I would say that we need 1/3 of the civilization to become designers, become conscious designers. That means, like, it doesn't matter if you're an artist, it doesn't matter if you're a soccer player who's experienced like flow states of scoring goals and dribbling and like a sort of novelty to that way. Whoever's experienced novelty, you have been actually, the universe has taught you ways of accessing the new. So if the universe has taught you ways of accessing the new, that means if the new deserves to be here more than the past, then technically means the past has to be in the passenger seat, not in the driver's seat. So I don't know why children are being taught stuff about the past rather than the educational system making them into explorers of the new. Because when you look at, that's why when I look at philosophy, I don't identify with language too much. I feel we are ultimately a silent, energetic presence beyond form. That's my personal conclusion. But like, I don't see a personality to the soul. The time of teacher-student has passed. There's a story, they asked Buddha, they're like, Buddha, is there going to be another Buddha? And Buddha was like, hey man, that's so rude to ask while I'm alive. And no, I'm joking. The Buddha didn't say that. The Buddha responds and says no, because Buddhism would have spread, the insight, the wisdoms would have spread so much that people wouldn't need it anymore. The purpose for the first time is in the hands of our attention. Atoms, they don't have a purpose, but they can generate through somehow subjectively. Evolution made an object become a subject to itself. So this and people wonder why it's hard to understand the concept of evolution. Yeah. We have totally avoided the subjective evolution. That's a huge part of my work in these talks, to somehow be able to introduce that to the to humanity's psyche, to have the idea at least out there. I feel honestly, when 10 people see an idea, it echoes. And that echo is big enough to set up a domino effect. Because what can the sky teach you? Only the infinite. What can the earth teach you? The void of the dirt. And what can you teach yourself? The novelty of your expression. That means it's like the higher teachings, they're not ideas. They can't be taught. They are just your eyes roaring because they are alive once in this form, in this format. You have to honor your DNA. You have to feel like it's an ancient, like as if your DNA is like Excalibur, do you know? We could and Imagine advanced alien civilization millions of years ago came and just threw these magical seeds, like bird seeds, on the ground, and a bunch of creatures, whoever was around those seeds and ate those seeds, were imbued consciousness. Here's the thing: either we try to change civilization 1.0, which I feel it's not unnecessary because sometimes the past needs its stories to get by. So we really can't change civilization 1.0. So if we want a better civilization but we can't change civilization, what's the strategy? We build another prototype. We're literally like a designer that on one part of the earth implemented a program. Now we're going back to the designer's table, building a second prototype, and the first world is okay. I actually feel that civilization 2.0 is like we have civilization 1.0 how it is now, and civilization 2.0 is coexisting beside it. So people have a choice to live in two different types, two different angles of the civilization, a yin yang civilization, I've called. Because all life is pretty much we're connecting images. What is knowledge? We're either linearly or non-linearly making connections with our perceptions and the whole inner landscape of it. It's not division, free mind, what I'm saying. What I'm saying about Civilization 2.0 is that in our inner realms, we start living in a better way than how we just treat the system as unupdated. It's updating too slow. That's the issue. If civilization was updating fast right now, we'd be like, all right, let's update Civilization 1.0. Even though people have different like stories they're holding on to, with different ethos, senses of their interpretations of the collective ethos they're walking through. But I'm saying, like, I don't know. When I think about it, it's like I'm taking a designer solution. I'm seeing a design. I don't like its design, and I'm like, we got to build another design, because if I don't like the original foundation of the design, how can I change it? To be honest, so we have to start living like advanced human beings before we actually have an advanced civilization. And when you go look at all the New Age community, all these different people taking spirituality seriously in a world that's physical, I'm telling you, it's like enlightenment is not for a person. Little is this said. It's not. You're not a person in that experience. It's for a presence. It's not for a person. It's not conceptual. That means there's a state of mind on this planet where it's unconditional. You have just noticed how your attention is before you do. So I think what we can, I don't know, like, I could steer this talk in different directions, but I'll say, like, if I take it back to the topic of arrival of the conscious human being, I'm saying it's an opportunity to be a civilized mind rather than a savage animalistic body. It's very easy again to break things, but much more complex to build. It takes longer to build. And I'm telling you, people are not good or bad. One thing we're certain though, people get bored. So you can say a dictator who's been a dictator for like 30 years, it's like, holy shit, man, I wanted to go snowboarding, now I can't. I wanted to go live so many lives. Imagine a dictator who deep down wanted to be a singer, but the situation had elevated too far. Wow, you think in the chat section, guys, says an incredible comment. I'm repairing my DNA and breaking chains of misery. Example generations. Yeah, if you live in a better way, your ancestors are like, nice job. You took all of us to a better, you set the bar higher. Let me tell you, language is important, how you use language, you think. You know? When you look at the concept of magic, it was language before being conscious of language. You know, somebody would come and say there's a dragon in the dark, and the person's imagination would attempt to perceive a dragon, and they would fear themselves out of their own natural living. That's why I see, when I see people who take conspiracies too seriously, I see people who have stopped living with the trust, in the trust of their mind. Do you know? Because if we consider this life to just be a physical activity, then it's justified physical movement. That means we could say violence is some sort of exercise, you know, because if it has to be physical. But then when we think about life not just being a physical activity, but being an activity where we as creatures have reached the level of discourse, where no longer we need to hold swords in gladiator arenas, we need to, in some sense, wield minds and perspectives and try to see literally like a massive exploration, as if the knowledge of the civilization becomes like the night's watch, and we send exhibitions beyond the wall, and those exhibitions beyond the walls are the greatest conversations and discussions that will be had. Because it is true, overpopulation is like, yeah, more people are living in like limited systems, you know, so eventually the limited systems would have to break or change, or something needs to happen, right? Like something will happen even if we don't do anything in a long enough time span, something will happen. But it's just that it's like there's a grand privilege of not being alone on an island. You know, you are shy until you realize your shyness is an island, and you're like, why am I standing in an island? You know, you get out of the constructions of your own psyche from the past. You literally step out of that your mindset as if it was a building. You just step out. You know? So live gently and let us usher in a multidimensional advanced civilization, because violence is a singular perspective. Violence is like, I don't like this, I'm going to break it. You know? Subconsciously, it has to be something close to those lines. That it's as if there is something the person hasn't understood, that it's like, why doesn't the violent person go kill every animal they see? Do you see? Because it's as if they they don't give a shit about a squirrel, but they're being violent to other human beings, for example. So what does that mean? It's a game of the mind. The person, there's so many people who are locked in their inner realms, you know? And their outer realms could be unhealthy too. That could be a justification too. So it's like all the separate, you know, it's strange. It's like this, we are a tree. Imagine a tree where the tree has this trunk, it branches, but then the branches become the roots of another trunk. And then the branches of that other trunk become the roots of another trunk. And it's this endless tree going towards like a column to the sky, where its branches are becoming roots, and its roots are becoming a trunk, and then the trunk is becoming branches, the branches are becoming roots, and the roots are becoming a trunk, and endlessly going towards the sky. Imagine a tree started to grow like that suddenly. We have to want something different if we want something different to happen. We have to push our comfort zone out of its comfort zone. Do you know? We have to be like that Spartan parenting. We got to take Spartan parenting advice, and until, you know, your kids kill the wolf or jumping backwards, it's as if like, you know, your son isn't there. This world is, of course, it's a simulated game of your own. 50% you're giving it a value, 50% it has a value, you gotta discover. And what can be said? Are humans just animals? By realizing we have noticed that we can be something more. It's like wondering about the psychology of the rise and fall of civilizations on a pebble in a light wheel. And right now, what I feel I'm doing, just every human being is doing, is we're creating mouth noises, we're expressing. So life has an expression reception formula to it, where how you express suggests how you receive, how you feel you deserve to receive. Let us be advanced while we can. Thanks for listening, guys. Much blessings and namaste.